Welcoming in our special guest, Michael Wilbon, co-host of PTI, ESPN NBA analyst and columnist, and editor of Chris Paul's book, 61 Life Lessons from Papa on and Off the Court. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Arizona as well. Happy to be here in the sun after too many rainy days in Denver and Miami. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Get away from that weather and into the gorgeous sunshine of Arizona. So absolutely. The book, 61. I want to know, how did this all kind of come together with Chris Paul approaching you to really help him bring this book to life?
Well, it's a good story. I guess sometimes you start at the beginning, right? I've known Chris. Chris and I have known each other for forever, since he was a senior in high school, the summer before his freshman year at Wake. He played in the game, probably Michael Jordan's classic in Greater Washington, D.C. And we met then. I don't even want to think about how many years ago that's been, but I guess it's been 20. And so obviously in his time in the NBA, and I've been covering the NBA first for the Washington Post and then for ESPN, Chris has been one of my favorite people, not just players, people. And part of it, maybe a small part, I mean, a lot of it revolves around basketball. But some of it revolves around his engagement and his ability to tell a good story, which a journalist is going to love. Chris has always been good at that. And so we see each other at games and tournaments first, and games and events around the NBA and basketball and that sort of thing, and kept in touch and have a lot of respect and even affection for each other. And so he had been talking about this for a while. And I've known the story. I know Chris's story, but you don't know anything in great detail until you sit down and talk about it. But he said to me a few years ago, he's going to write a book. He wanted to do this, and he wanted my advice on it, some counsel at first. And that's just how it started. And he said, look, you need to be involved in this on a bigger level than that. And I'm like, no, because you don't need anybody. Because Chris is a great storyteller. I've only edited 2 people with books. Charles Barkley, all right, and Chris Paul. And one thing I know is they're great storytellers. They're as good as storytellers as I am. That's just who they are. And so did they need some help with structure and shape, or maybe a little bit of direction? Okay. And that's where I think I come in. But those guys are spectacular storytellers in terms of detail, in terms of narrative, in terms of having an understanding of audience. And I think when you perform for a living like they do, that's part of it. But then some of it's born and some of it's developed. And my end of it was sort of like being a coach to get it out of them. And that's where it started. And I'm honored that he asked.
So you'll only edit books for top 20 all-time NBA players? Is that?
Yeah, I like that. If anybody's got an offer out there. No, because I know, look, Charles is one of my best friends. And, yes, that happened during the process of 2 books. And Chris and I probably knew each other as well at the start of that process as Charles and I did at the start of our process. And so, I'm honored that it turned out that way. Those guys are pretty damn good, and I'm pretty lucky that they have.
You talked about the process and what you've learned maybe during this process. What was the biggest revelation you had, not only during this editing process, but also about Chris Paul's drive during this?
That his curiosity goes far beyond basketball. And I root for Chris. People, you're a journalist, you're supposed to, well, first of all, I'm not a journalist anymore, probably, but, I have been one, and you're supposed to be detached, right? And not have favorites. That's BS. I have favorites. And he's one of them. And I root for him to, we were talking about this. We were actually having a Zoom call when the whole trade to the Suns was going down. And I'm biased. I still want it to, if there's a chance to happen here. I want that to happen for him as a basketball professional. The revelation, to answer your question, was about his curiosity about all things. Like we would have Zoom calls because this started during our conversations of, hey, do we want to do this? Started during COVID, the height of it. And so even though we were like, he's in Paradise Valley and I'm in North Scottsdale, you know, the NBA was certainly observing, you know, protocol. And so we had these Zoom calls, even though we're a 15-minute drive from each other. But his curiosity about a lot of things. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by that or impressed by that. It's not like there aren't a lot of professional athletes who have that. But Chris's is like, I mean, I don't want to say extreme because I don't want to make him sound like some, you know, strange dude. It's just his curiosity about a lot of things is deep, runs deep. And his curiosity about his own life and storytelling and what he could get out of this and how he could motivate people and how he could be motivated. And as you tie all that into a league trying to stay on its feet, which has nothing to do with 61, by the way, it was just all going on at the same time. Mm-hmm. His ability to juggle, and Chris has notebooks. I'm probably never supposed to tell this. He has like notebooks everywhere. And so we were talking about something. He goes, wait a minute. And he swivels around in a chair, he pulls out a notebook. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he has notebooks. He keeps notes meticulously sometimes. And I just said, you know, this exercise is the first of many in something else you're going to do. I get it. You want to win. I get it. I want you to. But this leads somewhere else. I don't know where it leads. I'm not that great in seeing around corners, but I don't know where it leads. But Chris's life is just starting, his full life. His basketball life, I'm not saying that's coming to an end. He might coach. He might be in media. I don't know what that holds. But if he wants to, there's so much more than that. I would call him the commissioner sometimes because I think he could be that. Mm-hmm. And so it's the curiosity. I know that, you know, you might be looking for an answer that might have to do with 61, but in that exploration, I could see all of that makes him up. Yeah. And it sort of drives him and makes up who he is.
Mike, to your point about his curiosity, there are so many characters and stories that he has to tell in the course of this book. So as the editor, I'm always curious about the writing process. How were you able to take what he was giving and mold it or shape it, give it structure? Because there's just so many interesting and informative pieces of information about his life that are in there. There are
things like, you know, very basketball nerdy stuff like recruitment and going to Carolina, you know, or a basketball camp in which he did early. And there are things that yet they're bigger life things. I mean, the murder of his grandfather and the timing of it and how that happened and how Chris feels about it later, all these years later now. And so there's several ways to go. You know, it's like me sitting down to write a column. I mean, where do I start that? Mm-hmm. And with this, I thought there were a couple of different times, you know, and in editing, I have certain people, your publishers, you have people trying to determine who audience is and what the purpose is and what you're getting out of this. And I'm sort of big at starting at the beginning of a lot of different things. But I just think that with narration, some things jump out at you and you try to go to that first. Try to. But also his voice, like it was clear to me that the service station, which is where the setting for so much of it, that was hugely important. And family. Chris has such an eye for detail too. Like some of the detail that jumped out, he would describe his grandfather and like how he was dressed or his hands in the sludge of a gas station, you know, in the middle of a day, or, you know, just going to work at, you know, 10 years old with CJ, his brother, and what they would do there. And all those things came to life. And it resonated with me because, and Chris and I talked about this, because my uncle had a grocery store on the south side of Chicago where my life played out like Chris's played out in Winston-Salem at the service station. So, you know, when things resonate with somebody who's telling the story, I mean, you're going to get a connection there that I think was natural and easy and a good place to start and spend a lot of time.
If you don't mind, I'd like to shift a little to the Phoenix Suns and kind of looking at them. What do you think their offseason might look like? There's obviously a lot of factors with this team, but I'd love your perspective on that if you don't mind.
Well, I think about it. I mean, I'm from Chicago originally, and it's always going to be home. Chicago's home.
Mhm.
And I'm a Bulls fan first and foremost. If I could tilt this camera, you'd see I have Chicago sports hanging like it's the ceiling of a stadium. But in my time coming out here, I certainly, like a lot of Midwesterners, have adopted things in Arizona. And for me, it's not football. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, I grew up with Larry Fitzgerald's dad. So there's more connection with Arizona sports and me.
Mhm.
Big Fitz is from the south side of Chicago, from the neighborhood we all grew up in. And so but it's not the Cardinals. It's the Suns that I have really come to root for and be interested in on a daily fanatic basis. And so when they got Chris, I just thought this was going to happen. I didn't think they could get to the finals the first year. That was insane. And then they got so close, being up 2-0, and I know how rare these opportunities are. And then the last 2 years have ended with these playoff losses that have been incredible, flameouts. And I want this to happen with Chris Paul here. And I've said that. I said that, on ABC last week during the coverage of the finals that I'm part of. I don't know that that's going to happen. It likely won't. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe. What do I know? I've met with the new owner, Matt Ishbia. I think that he's a dynamic man who wants to win and contend for championships. And if you are a fan of the Suns, you got to like that. What that looks like for a 38-year-old point guard, I don't know. Because I also want Chris to have his life. I know his family. I know Jada and his family. And so if being in Southern California is a thing that works out better for his life, I'm not going to root against that. I'm just not. Because I get it. I know these people as performers, and I know many of them as people. And all the things that they are. Chris and I have sons that are the same age. So I know what that's like, trying to deal with a high school kid from afar. I'm here, my son's in DC. Chris is here, his son's in LA. We're on Zooms, we're on FaceTime, I get it, man. I get it. And so I have a selfish component that wants to see that. I know how hard he worked at it. I know how hard he works at his craft. I know how hard he works at his body and trying to be younger and not be injured, and that crazy diets that he's tried to convince me to become a part of. I won't eat avocado no matter what he tells me. He and CJ, I love those guys. I love them. And I hope it happens here, but I don't know what the offseason is going to look like. I know what I would do if I was running the team, but I'm not running anything. I don't know what the offseason is going to look like. I don't know that they know. Some of these things unfold organically. And who calls you and says, yeah, we're interested in Ayton. So Kendrick Perkins said something yesterday that I loved, which was trade Ayton for Draymond Green. Golden State needs size. Draymond Green, Chris, Booker, Durant. I'll go against anybody, including Denver, with that. And I hadn't thought of it. I just hadn't. I was glad. Kendrick's idea. So let me just say, he said it, and I woke up this morning thinking about it. Anyway, so I'll get off on a dozen of those tangents over the next few days. I don't know what the offseason is going to look like, and I don't follow the team as I have followed teams in my life, as I've done for my whole career. I don't follow them that way. I'm a fanboy, and I love Devin Booker. Love what he is. Got to know his dad, Melvin. I root for them. I'm not a journalist when it comes to the Suns anymore. I was sort of hybrid that anyway at the end of the Charles period. But I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be hard to put together. And I'd like to see Chris be part of it. Long-winded answer, but you asked.
All right. So there's a lot of discussion around the NBA of best duos in the league currently. Where would you rank KD and Booker as far as best duo goes right now in this league?
Well, it's up there. They haven't had enough time together. They
Mm.
played what, 9 regular season games, and then whatever they played in the playoffs. What's my math in the playoffs? 5 games and 6 games. They had 11 games in the
Yeah.
playoffs. They played 20 games together. It was preposterous for them to become a favorite in Vegas. It was preposterous and even as it was happening, once Kevin got hurt that night and slipped, and even then, so he missed 10 games. They had 30 games together. You
Mhm.
can't win championships on 30 games. Denver's been together for 7 and 8 years. Their coach, Michael Malone, and Joker and Jamal. Jamal 7 years, Joker and Malone 8 years. Versus 30 games? Really? That's not realistic. And people aren't realistic about sports anymore. People are stupid about sports. People are hyped, but they're not smart about sports. We're dumber than ever about sports as a culture. We're more exposed, we're more passionate, we're more into it, we're more into the minutia and the numbers, and people can recite bullshit numbers. Well, I'm sorry.
That's all
Oh,
right.
it's fine. We do that all the
About
time.
Oh, yeah.
sports, but they don't know anything about what it takes because people aren't literate about anything anymore and about sports either. So Joker and Jamal are the best duo, period.
Mhm.
They got rings to prove it.
Mhm.
After that, I'm going to have to say, who do they just, there's nobody that I'm going to pair with Jimmy Butler, so Miami won't come into play there. The Lakers, yeah, LeBron and Anthony Davis. But before LeBron and Anthony Davis, even though they beat the guys I'm about to say next, I'm going to say Steph and Clay. I'm still going to say Steph and Clay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Could say Steph and Draymond, but I'll say Steph and Clay. After that, even though they've come up short 5 times, I'm going to say Tatum and Brown. They've come up short. Would I break them up? Maybe.
Mm.
I'm not paying 2 guys $600 million, $300 million each. I'm not. That's not going to work. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
No matter what anybody says. Has nothing to do with basketball. Everything to do with budget,
Mm.
which even billionaires have. And after that, maybe I'll say KD and Book. And by the way, KD and Book could rise to 2.
Mhm.
They need some time together.
Right.
They need some time together. And I'm less concerned with duos. I don't know how they got to be a thing. I mean, okay, Magic and Kareem, yeah. Scottie and Michael, yeah. I like the ensemble. You know, I still like the ensemble I like the quintet. Is it a quintet of it's a quartet of Ayton, but Ayton seems to be, they should have traded Ayton at the trade deadline. They should have gotten rid of him. They should have.
Yeah.
Easy for me to say hindsight. But I was saying that in real time. I would have traded him. Pouting doesn't go with what the other 3 guys do.
Mm.
They're just not pouters. They're not in their feelings, as young folks say. As my 15-year-old would say to me. They're not. I mean, that's not Chris, that's not KD, and that's not Book. And so am I sort of blaming Ayton? Yeah. Yeah, I am. But more so I'm blaming the club for not trading him. They should have gotten rid of him.
Yeah.
Or sign him back before the season started or get rid of him.
Mm.
And that brought them down. And they weren't ready because Kevin hadn't been there long enough.
Right. Well, speaking of Ayton, I did have to ask because as a Sun show, we would be remiss if we did not ask you about this. But there was that viral moment of you and Stephen A. from 2 years ago in the Western Conference Finals. You know the one. Were you aware that
I have a picture of it on my wall in my man cave. Somebody did a color. I don't even know how to move this. I would move it and show it to you. I'll screw up the transmission. I don't want to do that. I'm looking at a exact cartoon, if you will, but it's an artist rendering. And somebody said, would you like this? I'm like, oh my God, I would like it. It was like a month later. And I got it as a Father's Day gift, I guess the next year.
Mhm.
I've had it for a couple of years now. Yeah, what about it though? Yes. Frozen.
When were you aware that that had blown up the way that it did? Because it was the
Seconds
perfect
later.
seconds.
Because the person who took the video sent it to somebody who showed it posted it, I guess.
Hmm.
And we could see it like before the end of the game. Not that was the end of the game. Before the end of the evening, before we did our post game.
Mhm.
And we were just sitting there going, okay. Yeah.
That was such an iconic
it
moment.
was. Yeah, it
Honestly,
really
It
was.
is. It is. And I it's weird to be associated with something like that, and it comes up. And I don't want to make it sound like I don't root for Ayton, because I do. I just think he's gonna be one of those guys like Zion who needs to change the scenery.
Mhm.
And he's gonna need to be a little bit scared to have to be told, yeah, we don't want you.
Mhm.
And that's happened throughout the history of sports. It's not
Yeah.
new to those guys.
Yeah.
So I root for Ayton, who I like, just not with this group.
Last one for us. I'm a bit of a media nerd, so I've always wanted to ask you this, but you and Tony started PTI in 2001, back when ESPN was primarily Sports Center and highlights. And 2 decades later, what do you think the legacy of the show is, positive or negative? And how do you think people will look at it in the scheme of things?
I don't know. I'm not going to give you a total answer cop out. I don't assess what we do every day. Oh my God, did he knock that in for Eagle? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, what a shot. I don't assess what people say. How'd the show go today? I don't know. I don't do that. I mean, I am a daily former journalist, former daily journalist. There's another day. Like there's a show tomorrow. I got to tell you this, and I understand the question. I do, because when something's 20 years old, it's not just a fair question. It's probably a necessary question. I hate the word legacy. Like people say, what is Joker's legacy? Damn, can Joker have a resume first before he has a legacy? Everybody under 50 years old has become obsessed with the word legacy. It's like, I don't know. So that brings me full circle. Fair question. I don't know. I mean, people have bitten pieces off of it, and they have the rundown. They do stuff. They copy stuff we do. They try to put together people in a phony way just to pair them. This guy played football and this person wrote a column. Put them together. I mean, Tony and I were friends on a daily basis, screaming at each other, playing golf together, traveling the world, like to Seoul, South Korea, for 20 years before the show came on. So we've been doing that since 1980. Show comes on in 2001. The show is put together by somebody who ain't us, Eric Rideholm and Matt Kelleher and others. But I can't name everybody, but those guys run it day to day. When I hang up with you guys, I'm gonna go sit out in my rocking chair in the sun and plan the show out further, because they've already got started. I don't know what I know people, look, we wouldn't be on this long if people didn't have some sort of affection for the show, respect for it, both. We wouldn't be on this long. We're on longer than stuff like all the stuff I really love, like Cheers. I mean, it's kind of surprising in that way. I said to Tony, I'll leave you there. I said to Tony when the show started, I said, I know we'll be good at this. I know we can discuss sports, and we can discuss it better. And it turns out we can discuss it much better as we go years away, because nobody covers anything generally anymore. There's just specialists. This person covers the NBA. This person covers the NHL. This person covers football only. We covered all the shit. Plus 10 Olympics. I've been to 10 Olympics, covered 10. Okay? Nobody else has done that. Nobody talking to you every day on these networks has done that. So when we get ready to compare something, I can compare it to Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis, because I was there. I can also compare it to Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, because I was there. And I can compare it to John Elway because I was there. And I can sit and talk to Larry Fitzgerald about this stuff over dinner, which we often do because I was there. And they know it. And so that, I think, will be missed because people won't respect it. They don't understand it. They don't know it because they don't have it anymore because nobody does it. And we'll just look like dinosaurs. And so my thought is the legacy will be we're just two old dudes. That's how my 15-year-old thinks of us.
Well,
we get into fights every day with people from you guys' age, slightly older and younger. Fights every day. So the legacy will be, something I can't even say on a podcast. But that's okay, because that's what we do with sports, right? We sit around and we argue and curse at each other, people that we love.
Yeah.
That's what PTI does.
I'll say this. I think part of your legacy is inspiring people in my generation to realize, hey, we can do this and have fun with sports and have a quality discussion, and that's a possible career path because
Wow.
I think that's part of the legacy.
Well,
So thank you for
that's
that.
an honor for you to say that, and I appreciate it. It's an honor. I don't know. Sometimes we're made aware of things where people will say, "Hey, listen, seriously," and yeah, I mean, if that's been done, was it done intentionally? No, I think all of our actions, given the way we grew up and the way we were educated in the business to start it, I think all of it pointed to that being just part of our DNA. I mean, we think we learned how to do it the right way, both educationally and professionally. And we're arrogant about it. We know what should be done and what shouldn't be done. We know what an audience needs to feel and needs to have and what we don't give a damn about. And we have very definite ideas on those things. Doesn't mean they're right, but we have very definite ideas on it. But that, what you just said is, okay, if that's a legacy, I'll take it right now. Put it on a tombstone and we're good to go.
One of the cool things about you, and this is just a side note, is that I was there when you got to see Northwestern win their first tournament game up in Utah.
Oh, yeah.
In a long time. Yeah, I was actually a couple rows from you, and
wow.
I could see the excitement in your face, obviously, when they won that first game. And then I got to see you in a bar maybe a couple hours later, and you and Jay Donde and Michael Blackistone were all there. And I just think it really speaks volumes about the type of person that you are, that you took the time to speak with me and my counterpart at that moment. Even though you guys were there having a few beers and having a good time. And I don't like to be a fanboy, but I always admired the fact that people take the time out of their schedule to be able to take pictures and really talk.
I appreciate that.
A few things.
I'll tell you a quick story about that. So when the show first started, 2001, I'm working on a book with Charles. And we are in Atlanta. I'm not sure why we're in Atlanta at the time, but we're in Atlanta in a place called the Clubhouse. And we got notebooks and tape recorders out on a table. And we start there at lunchtime. We have lunch. There's nobody there left. Everybody leaves. But then we're still there at like 5:30 when like happy hour people are coming in. And my show is brand new. It's been on, so maybe this is the spring of 2002. So the show's been on 6 months and people are coming up to Charles and me. And they're coming up to Charles and they see this person Charles was with and they say, "Oh my God, I've seen you on that new show. That's your show. I've seen you on that." And this happens about 4 or 5 times and we're trying to work. And I roll my eyes or something at the 5th or 6th, 7th time this happens. As soon as a person walks away or maybe while they're there. And Charles waits until they leave and he goes, "Hey." And I should do it in Charles' voice. "Hey, boy, you can't be behaving like that. You go into people's living rooms now. What the hell do you think you're doing? You got to act. You got to realize you're a public figure. You accepted this, so learn how to be one."
Yeah.
And it was a quick, firm lecture, as only Charles can deliver it, laced with a few expletives. And I never forgot it. And I remember that night in the hotel thinking to myself, if Charles Wade Barkley can have hundreds of people per day come up to him and never lose that ability to say, yes, I will sign it. And this is before camera phones, 2001. Sign stuff, take pictures with real cameras, hug people, kiss people, shake hands. If he can do this hundreds of times in a day or two, I could probably do this a few times. And so the other night in Denver during the finals, I was out with Charles and Grant Hill. And Charles said, and there's probably there might not be a PTI without Charles, because he talked to Tony and me both and said, I know you guys are newspaper guys, but you better shut up and pay attention to what ESPN is offering you. And we had dinner, and Charles said, you remember that? And I said, yeah. And I said, what I remember most is him saying, hey, you know, you come into these people's living rooms every day. You can't do this. You can't roll your eyes. Stop. Don't be that. Don't be like the people who do that. So whatever it is that that in that bar at that time, by the way, it would have only been ginger ales because I don't drink beer. But yeah, that was an exciting time.
Yeah.
Look, we're fans. You know, you mentioned Black and Stone and the Don Day. We've all done the same thing. We all went to Northwestern. We're all very proud of our alma mater. We all we all bleed purple every day. But we learned how to combine those things and learned how to put it aside when we need to put it aside, we think. So yeah, so I'm glad we weren't jerks. We weren't jerks.
No, I still got the picture.
Why were you there?
I was there covering Arizona.
You were covering. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the most fun days of my life.
Yeah. I don't like Salt Lake City, but I like that experience.
I like Salt Lake City.
Oh man, the bars close at like 8. Come on.
Well, you know, I'm drinking ginger ale, so I'm not. And by the way, I spent enough time in Salt Lake City to know if you buy the membership, beer is still available to you.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's a veteran tip about the membership I learned back when I was in my 20s and going to see Stockton and Malone. Yeah.
There you go. You gotta make sure you bookmark that one. Michael, thank you so much. We really appreciated your time today and all of the stories and insight that you've shared with us. Everybody, make sure you go pick up 61 Life Lessons from Papa on and off the court. Is available for pre-order right now and releases on June 20th. Thank you again so very much, Michael. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad you had that plug at the end. I'm waiting for more copies right now so I can put them on every set that I'm on. And I think it's the first of many interactions like that, whether it's book form or something else, with Chris and the world at large. He's got a lot to say.